Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Game Sharks. I am one of your co-hosts, Jimmy Good, and joining me, as always, is my other co-host, Mr. Corey Lang. Corey, how you doing, buddy?
Good, Jimmy. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, thank you for being here, as always, and returning favorite guest of the show, Anthony Bettine. Anthony, how are you doing, man?
I'm good, man. How are you guys doing?
Just fine. Thank you so much for joining us. And Corey and I were talking about this earlier. I love your setup down there. You've got the Godzilla poster. You got the whole like North Woodsy vibe.
Yeah, the Minnesota wood paneling, very 70s. Yeah.
I think
so.
It's
if the
great.
Apocalypse happens, you don't need to go look for wood. You just tear it off the wall.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you guys
I got everything I need down here. Yeah. There's a bar. The TV's down here. The PS5. So we're ready to go.
Perfect.
Oh my gosh. I was wondering about that before. I was like, is he playing the games down there? You totally are.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's great. And today we are actually going to jump right into it because usually I like to chum the waters with what we've been playing, but that's all we're going to talk about today because we've got two massive games to talk about: Horizon Forbidden West and Elden Ring. We're going to start with Horizon though, because these two guys, they've played it. I, unfortunately, have not because I don't have a PlayStation 5. Corey and Anthony are the only two people on the planet who actually own a PlayStation 5.
Still
to
this day.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so they're the only two people playing it. No, I'm just kidding. But
I could be a millionaire, sell it, or I could just keep the one of the only two existing PlayStations. But
it's only going to go up.
Yeah.
they could only do the two. But yeah, I want to start with that, and just to kind of give you guys, everybody at home watching, about this, because I'm sure Corey, I don't know if you're going to kind of show them a little bit about the game. We've talked about Horizon Zero Dawn in the past. One of my favorite games of the past couple of years. It's a third-person action game where you're playing as Aloy in this post-apocalyptic world filled with robotic dinosaurs and animals, and you are fighting them with a bow and arrow. Well, it's more than that, but that's kind of like my elevator pitch to people. Just beautiful, cool game. And this one seems to follow in that legacy from Guerrilla Games, who were known for making first-person shooters like Killzone back in the day and hard pivoted away to something completely different, which is so very cool. But Horizon Forbidden West. Oh my gosh. Okay. So Corey, beforehand, we talked about it. You've played about 10 hours so far, right? Okay.
About 10 hours. Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Yep.
And Anthony, you've played a little bit more than 10?
Yeah, I think I have about 40 hours so far.
Ooh, well done.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, then we're going to start with Corey because Anthony's going to be like, here's what happens next. No, I'm just kidding. Corey, did you play the first Horizon? Did you like it? For just to refresh people, and where do you sit in your 10 hours right now?
Yeah, obviously, I think, it's, for me, it's 2017 all over again. Obviously, famously, Guerrilla and Sony decided to release the first Horizon game. And then was it just a couple weeks, not even, Nintendo released Breath of the Wild.
It's rough. Rough.
Really, really rough. And, two big AAA tentpole open world games, two different publishers. Obviously, like many, I just dove into Breath of the Wild and I never went back to Zero Dawn. Sadly, not a knock at that game. I just never went back. So I feel, and we're going to get into Elden Ring later, obviously. I feel sad for Guerrilla. That's right. Again, not a knock at the sequel. I'm just so obsessed with Elden Ring that it'll be a little bit until I go back to Forbidden West. But yeah, no, I played about 10 hours. I got just a little outside the moment, like the full open world kind of opens up for like the second time. From what I understand, it opens up different areas in waves. Anthony can confirm that later, but so there's like maybe a 6 to 8 hour opening tutorial zone. Anthony, you're gonna have to step in and help me. What's the name of that? It's got a weird name. The
Daunt.
The Daunt.
I believe. Yeah. Which
Daunt.
the first game had something like that too. I don't remember what it was called, but
right.
Yeah, the structure is very similar.
The Daunt. Yeah. Thank you. So I just got through the Daunt, maybe a couple hours past that when the world kind of opens up a little bit. Probably the most beautiful video game I've ever seen. And that's that's saying with Ratchet and Clank in mind. I think this game even surpasses that game in terms of visual fidelity. There's a day and night cycle in Forbidden West. I don't know how Guerrilla does it, but even when it's nighttime, it's still brightly lit and beautiful. It's incredible. I'll put some B-roll up on screen. You know, the B-roll is going to be one of those things where you kind of have to see this game for yourself. So I'll do my best to kind of put some stuff on screen to kind of showcase what this game looks like, but truly gorgeous. The lighting is absolutely stunning. I think Guerrilla Games is doing some black magic sorcery behind the scenes.
Yeah.
You know, we're only a year, not even a little over, actually, no, we're a little over a year into the PS5's life cycle, and they're already just killing it with these visuals. So visually striking right off the bat. Maybe I'll throw it to Anthony. Jimmy, I'll let you throw it to Anthony. I have some further thoughts, but I'll kind of circle back once I hear what's going on with Anthony.
Yeah, well, Anthony, if you've done 40 hours worth, then you can really talk about not only the visuals, but the combat and the story, which I think are kind of the three pillars of most video games, right? But so far for you, what has been your experience? What are the standouts, and if there are any kind of inadequacies that you can talk about?
Yeah, definitely. I'm really enjoying it. I was also a big fan of the first game. I did not play it in 2017. I just played it for the first time last year, I think, or maybe the year before.
Oh, cool. You're going in fresh.
Yeah, absolutely. Really liked the first game, loved the story. This one is, if you like the first game, this one is the first game, like with everything turned up to 11. So like Corey mentioned, it's absolutely gorgeous. It is the facial animation in particular, like in the cutscenes and the conversations, is like the best I've ever seen in a game. It's really stunning what they've done with the motion capture and the animation. And yeah, it's one of those games where, like, because it's a big open world, I'll just be running around and come across like this incredible vista and just like put the controller down and stare at it for a while, because it's unbelievable how good this thing looks. The lighting is incredible. The water effects are really strong. In terms of gameplay, so the big knock on the first one was that all the ranged combat and stuff was really strong, but the melee combat was not great. It's still not great in this one. It's definitely improved. There's like a huge skill tree now, with like 6 different areas, and one of them is specifically melee focused.
Sweet.
And there are different combos you can unlock, and things like that. It's still not the strongest part of the game, and you mostly use the melee combat in like the human to human combat, which was also never the strongest like thing in the first one. It's all about the fights with the big robot dinosaurs, and that stuff is all still excellent. It's so good. It's kind of got like a Monster Hunter vibe to it, where you really have to prepare and like figure out what the weaknesses are of the monster you're fighting, set some traps. There's I don't remember if this was in the first game, but they've introduced like a food system in the second one.
Oh, really? It might be new.
Yeah, so you can go to chefs in different towns and bring them ingredients, and they'll cook you, kind of like in Breath of the Wild, except you have to like go to a town to do it. Okay. And you can cook foods that boost different aspects of your character. There's a lot of new robots to fight in this one, and there's a lot of like big showcase moments when you meet those for the first time. Really cool stuff. In terms of story, so I'm probably like 3/4 of the way through the main story, I think. Okay. I'm kind of rushing through this game because I really want to play Elden Ring, but I'm trying not to rush through it. I'm trying to take my time with it because I am really enjoying it. But that said, I think I'm about 3/4 of the way through the main story. It is, it takes some turns. It takes some weird turns, which the first one did too. There were a lot of twists, and like the mystery of the first game was one of my favorite parts, unraveling that, what happened to the world and how Aloy is tied into it and stuff like that. I think this one expands on that in a few really cool ways. I think there's some story beats, without spoiling anything, that have felt a little goofy to me. But I'm curious to see how they pay off. And I like the story overall. I like the ways they've expanded the world. I like the first one didn't really have this, but in this one there's kind of a like a base you get to eventually. I don't know if you've gotten there yet, Corey. But eventually you establish like a base where all the characters like in your circle start to gather, and it's kind of like the Normandy in Mass Effect. Like you can go there between missions and talk to people, and they'll talk about what you guys just did and how they're interacting with the other characters. And that stuff's all really cool. So yeah, it's like I said, like I think if you liked the first game, you're really gonna like this one. I think if you didn't like the first one, this game's not necessarily gonna make you a fan, because it is they refine some of the stuff from the first game, but it is really just the first game, but more of it. It's definitely got it's definitely a different approach to an open world than Elden Ring, because it's very much like the Ubisoft, like here's a million icons, go click on them and run to them and see what they are. So
icon barf is a buzzword I've heard multiple times the last couple weeks. That's a new one in my open world vocabulary.
Yeah.
Barf.
Yeah. This one definitely has that, which, I think we've talked about before on the show. I had that with The Witcher 3, where I got to a certain point in The Witcher 3 and literally turned the game off and was like, I'm never playing this again. This game, like, honestly approaches that level, but the nice thing about it is it makes it really easy to avoid all the stuff you're not really interested in. Like I mentioned that the human to human combat isn't very good. There's like outposts in this game, like there are in every Ubisoft game, where you just go like clear out a camp. And that's pretty much all human to human stuff. So I've just been skipping all of those because I don't find that stuff interesting. There's not really much story element to it. So it's nice that you can kind of tailor your experience to what you want to do and what you want to see in the game world.
Interesting. Okay. My biggest question to start off with here, as I start to grill you on it, have you fought the mammoth, the like robotic mammoth guy that's like part mammoth, part Oliphant from Lord of the Rings on the beach? You fought this thing. How was it?
Yeah, that thing kicked my butt a lot. So one of the criticisms I have of the second one is it's so far it's a lot easier than the first one. I remember the first one being pretty challenging, especially with a lot of those bigger boss fights. This one so far has been much easier overall. That fight in particular was difficult, and it kind of like got me back on, because I was kind of like, I don't know about this. Like it seems really easy. Like I don't know if they've really improved on the combat from the first game, but that fight was really interesting, really tough. The mammoth looks sick. It looks amazing. So yeah, there's a lot of really cool. There's a big like turtle thing now. I'm trying to remember. I think it's called a snap shell or a shell snapper or something like that. It's just a massive turtle that will like jump at you and try and body slam you.
Cool.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing. What kind of new armaments do you have, by the way, for this too? Because I saw a few in that demo we saw back in like E3 or one of those conferences a while ago. But are there any that really stick out that you're like, wow, I really dig this new thing?
Yeah, there's I don't know how many new weapons there are overall. There's two that I've been using. One that I just unlocked, which is like a disc thrower. So you like throw a disc and it kind of digs into the enemy, and then it will come back. And if you catch it 3 times in a row, then it turns explosive. So the next time you throw it, it'll just blow up and do a ton of damage. Which is really tricky to use because the monsters are moving all around and stuff. But it's so much fun and it's so cool when you pull it off. And then the other weapon that's new is called the spike thrower, which is essentially like a javelin. And that actually, I unlocked one of those that kind of broke the game. Like it's so with all the weapons in Horizon, like the bows and they have like a trip caster which shoots traps. They all have different ammo types which correspond to different weaknesses for the robots. So like there's fire, there's acid, plasma, all kinds. This spike thrower I unlocked specifically has explosive damage, and then what's called tear damage, which for people who haven't played Horizon, tear damage is all the monsters will have different like components to them, different weapons, different body parts that you can rip off during combat to either weaken them or to collect resources to upgrade your stuff. And this spike thrower with tear damage will literally just like dig into the robot and start tearing stuff off. And it like the past like 3 boss fights I did, I just peppered them with that thing and it was over in like 5 minutes.
Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. That sounds so cool. Because I remember thinking that like they didn't have a javelin type thing I don't think in the first game to that extent. I was like, that'd be really cool to see something like that. So it's great to see that play a big role here.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. So I thought there was like another, like, I don't know, some sort of goo thrower, or like some sort of, is there any type of like adhesive or slowdown thing?
Yeah. So there's, I think the weapon that, I think that might be a new like ammo type. The weapon I have that does that was in the first game, which is just like the slingshot that shoots grenades or whatever.
Yeah.
There is an adhesive type. I actually have not used it much. But yeah, for a lot of like the faster monsters, that can be really nice because you can slow them down.
Yeah, that's what
But
I'm
yeah,
looking for.
Yeah.
A little crowd control, baby. I always need that crowd control or ice or whatever else. But that
Yep.
the tear damage, that just takes me back. Collecting shards and doing all of that. I really enjoyed my time with that first game. And I'm glad to hear that you're enjoying it here too. But you did make a great point. That first game is tough. And if you think about it for a second, you are a person getting smacked in the face with a robotic tail or claw or whatever. So your health bar would be like this, and you get one hit and it'd be like, whoop, it'll go to like half. And you're like, oh my gosh, you're like eating berries really quickly. You'd be like, I'm eating berries, I'm fine. But is that the same here? It doesn't sound like it's as punishing.
So it's definitely feels easier to me overall. Like I said, there's a couple big battles that I've had trouble with. But like that game breaking weapon that I unlocked, coupled with I don't remember if they had this in the first game, but I remember the healing mechanism from the first game, and it's the same in this one. You have the herbs in your pouch. You just hit a button and it slowly restores your health bar. But in this one, like you have a set number that you can carry, and then you have a pouch that has more. And so if you run out of the ones that you carry, you can just hit a button and it'll refill it. It takes a couple seconds, but it's not long. The healing is very, very forgiving. I feel like it's more forgiving than it was in the first game.
Okay.
And so there's rarely been a time, like there have been times where I've gotten like half or 3/4 of my health bar knocked out by one attack. But the healing has been so forgiving that I can usually bounce back pretty quickly. It's also pretty easy to disengage. Which I remember it being more difficult in the first game. Like I remember the monsters being pretty dogged in their pursuit of you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In this one, it's a little easier to be like, okay, I need to take a step back and get away. They have the smoke bombs where you can, throw one of those down and then sneak away, sneak into the tall grass and stuff like that. I also will say that the way I've been playing the game is, so Corey was talking a little bit about the structure earlier. There's that opening like 6 to 8 hours, which is kind of like the tutorial, the starting area. Then you get to a place that's a little more open. And then eventually you get to what's called the Forbidden West. And then it actually again past there's another part where it kind of opens up. And so what I've been doing is playing the main story up to those points and then going back and doing all the side stuff I missed. So I'm probably a little over leveled for some of the stuff I'm doing. I don't know if they do any sort of scaling system. I don't think so. I think it's just like monsters up to this point are this level, and as you go further west. So I'm probably like I think I'm definitely over leveled for some of the stuff, which probably contributes to that feeling of ease as well.
Oh yeah, that's okay. That's RPGs, baby. Don't worry about that. That's not on them. Or I mean, it's not on you. It's on them. So another question I want to talk with both of you about. I'll start again with Anthony, and then Corey will go to you too. Traversal. The game in the first place, it was very like, okay, the only places you can really climb up are places that are like Uncharted style with little yellow outcroppings and stuff. You had your kind of, it wasn't a grapple, but you had a rope that you could swing down from things, but not really up from things. It looks like this game is trying to kind of push forward with not only a grapple hook, I think, but it also has kind of the hang glider thing from Breath of the Wild. I shouldn't say it's just from Breath of the Wild, but that's what I kind of think of. And the ability to swim underwater. Anthony, have you found the traversal mechanics to really make it feel better? Or were you just kind of like, oh, they added those and it's nice, but I don't really think about it too much?
I'm conflicted. I don't think the traversal feels great in this game. I've had a lot of points where so in this game you have your focus, obviously, that's this device Aloy has on her head where you can scan the environment. And when you scan the environment in this game, it'll highlight in yellow any places you can climb. So that's like, on mountains and stuff, or like structures, any like points you can grab will be highlighted so you can jump onto them. I found it really inconsistent. like moving between those points. Like I was just playing actually a couple hours ago, and I was in this like small cavern, and I could see yellow points going all the way up to this hole in the ceiling, and I was like, oh, I bet I can climb all the way up there and emerge on top, and there's probably something up there. And I tried for like 5 minutes to find the right like button press and stick angle to go up, and I could not do it. So it's really inconsistent. It's also I wish it was stickier, because a lot of this game, especially the early missions, a lot of the early missions are like Uncharted style, trying to make your way through these ruins. You have a new tool called a pole caster, which is the grappling hook. And so with that, you can like jump up to points, but you can also grab things in the environment and pull them. So it's a lot of like pulling vents open so you can get into air ducts and stuff like that. And I've just found a lot of that stuff is like you have to be really precise with your jumps, or else you're going to fall, which can be really frustrating. I spent like a half hour on this one early mission because I kept missing these jumps, and it got really, really frustrating, because it feels like it should be stickier than it is. It feels like there should be some more forgiveness with those jumps, and there just isn't.
Yeah, well, that's too bad to hear, because I remember thinking about that, and that was one of the biggest things for me when that eventual comparison came between the first game and Breath of the Wild, where like the maniacs who made Breath of the Wild, they're like, you can climb almost anything. It's not a big deal. And I'm like, it's not going to break your game. They're like, don't worry about it. We've already thought about that. And I was just hoping that Horizon would maybe take a page out of that, or Assassin's Creed book, and say like, yeah, you maybe not climb like everything, but we're going to allow you to have a little bit more freedom, as opposed to these very kind of stringent rules we put in place where you get those frustrating moments, which I'm sorry to hear that you're having.
It's definitely more open than the first game. And there is a lot of like, you can kind of like Skyrim your way up stuff where you're just like spam the jump button trying to get up. But it's definitely not Breath of the Wild level where it's like I see a mountain and I can climb it however I want to.
Yeah. Okay, Corey, have you run into the same difficulties with these early levels the first couple hours?
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to talk about Horizon without talking about Breath of the Wild, right? Because those, again, it's 2017 all over again. And yes, they did give you the glider, which helps a lot. There were two big reasons that I never went back to Horizon. It was the lack of being able to climb anything and go anywhere like you could in Breath of the Wild, and the glider. So I think Gorilla obviously fixed one of those things, right? You got the glider. Anthony said the word inconsistent when it comes to climbing and traversal. That's totally on point. It's like sometimes I think I can climb everything, sometimes I can't. Others you can kind of fudge your way up a cliff or fudge your way up to a ledge. You're never really quite certain what you can and can't climb, which is a huge problem for me, because now then I'm constantly like jumping up and down at a wall. And it's like, oh, all right, I got to find a way up. Where, yeah, like even Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which just came out last year, which I think is comparable in size and scope. I think Valhalla doesn't have the visual fidelity and polish that Horizon does, but at least in Valhalla, you can climb and go anywhere you want.
Yeah.
That's extremely frustrating to me. And again, it's hard to talk about this game without bringing up Elden Ring, which we'll talk about later. This is just kind of the situation we're in right now with these two games. So you have the glider, which helps a lot, but the climbing is still bad. It's just, it's not great.
That bums me out, because I was really hoping that was going to be a bit better. And it's nice to hear that they've made some kind of improvements where that is concerned, and also with melee combat, because for me, when I go back and look at like the review I did for it a while ago, those were the two kind of main things that bothered me the most. And seeing the contemporaries kind of have that figured out was frustrating, because I was like, oh my gosh, they'll figure it out on the second time. It sounds like they're getting there. Maybe with that third iteration, they'll be like, all right, here we go. Because I have no doubt in my mind that they're going to keep going with this franchise, even if they keep releasing it right next to these other big games.
Yeah, I've reached a point in the story, and again, I won't spoil anything, but I can see them setting up for either the DLC or the sequel. Like I can see them starting to plant the seeds of like, this is what's going to happen next. This is where you're going to go next. And obviously, like it's been a massive franchise for Sony, so I'm sure there is more Horizon on the horizon.
Oh my gosh, well done. Well, let's wrap up our Horizon talk here. Corey, I want to start again with you. The first 10 hours, are you hungry to go back?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to go back. I like what's going on in the story, and I had some things spoiled for me that I'm not going to obviously spoil on the show. That some locations that you're going to visit later, which I'm sure Anthony is aware of. I'm like, that sounds really cool. I want to see. I want to see that stuff unfold. It is. I just can't stress how beautiful this game is, and I really like the combat in these games. I think the combat's really fun. I'm having a blast experimenting with different, approaches to combat, like with the trip casters or just using your bow. I love the time slow-mo stuff. I think it's just really fun. Beautiful particle effects when you're in combat. Little pieces of machinery are just being shredded off the thing. Anthony, I'm sorry, I apologize if I glossed over. Did you talk about hacking the little riders?
No, I haven't. Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead. Go ahead, Corey. Talk about that.
Okay, well, obviously, and we're going to get into Elden Ring. And Elden Ring, you can spawn a horse, but so traversal. And forgive me, I didn't play a lot of the first game, but in this game, you can hack essentially like robot bisons. They're like that's the best way I can describe it. I don't know if you could do that in the first game. I didn't get far enough.
Yeah.
If you could do that, so forgive me if you could. But that's back regardless, and that's still super fun. Because you can sneak up, you can hack the machine, or you can straight up engage in combat, and you still have an opportunity to hack that, and then you can get on and you can ride. And I think that's just a really fun way to approach mounts, right? I go back to the World of Warcraft, the mount, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm totally gonna go back. You know, obviously again it's hard to talk about because we're going to get into Elden Ring and it's such a different approach to open world game design. There's a sequence not too far into when you get into the open world in Horizon where you're in this kind of water dungeon. I think Anthony had some back and forth on this, and it's a sequence where you're taking a battery out of a door and then you move it to another door to unlock this other door, and then you have to go back and grab it. It's like my wife walked up and she's like, haven't I seen this? I'm like, you're totally right. This is something you've been doing since the PS1 era.
Yep.
And it's just that open world stuff that I just don't want to do in games anymore. In addition to the icon bar and all the side quests and everything. But I think there's enough there that's keeping me engaged with the visuals, the story, and the combat. Those three things alone, I'm definitely going to go back and see it through.
Cool. And Anthony, 40 hours in, and I know you want to get to another game, but are you still like you're excited to go back, but also trying to take your time with it? Where do you sit right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going to see it through. It'd be dumb to sink 40 hours into it and give up. I am trying to. I was really tearing through it at first, and then I tried to slow down a little bit because I am really enjoying it and I want to give the game its due and all that. I am really enjoying it. I am glad I'm playing it before Elden Ring because I think playing Elden Ring first would have cast a worse light on this game, just in terms of some of the design decisions and the world and stuff like that. But yeah, if you like the first Horizon, especially if you like any of these open world type of games, it's a must play. You're gonna love it. And yeah, I'm really enjoying my time with it.
And I spent $70 on it, so I'm definitely gonna.
Exactly right. I was gonna say this seems like the second. Well, I guess you could maybe say third game that Sony's released on the PlayStation 5 that is like, it seems like almost every PlayStation 5 owner would consider picking up to like kind of showcase off the power of the machine. The other two being Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart and then The Last of Us Part 2, probably, for depending on who you talk to. So yeah, it's interesting to hear that. And it's cool to hear that it's such a beautiful game because that was one of the things that really drew me to the franchise in the first place. The striking visuals, and not that robot dinosaurs haven't been done before, but they've never been done quite like this. There's something about it. There's something wonderful and cool and
And there's
enticing.
all these like different cultures and tribes and like the
Yeah.
garb they're wearing.
Yeah.
Gorilla did such a great job with the attention to detail, like the jewelry and the
Oh,
colors. They just killed it across the board. I think to say it's just a technical showpiece is unfair.
yeah.
I think that's a very unfair assessment of this game. Like, oh, it's just, the bells and like, no, it's like they really killed it on all the levels. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's beautiful. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, and a shout out to the music as well, because I remember the music in the first game being really good. It sounds like they got the same composer back, which is really great to hear because I love that theme song, and I'm sure it sounds wonderful to kind of complement the actual visuals on screen too, which is very good. So yeah, shout out to them and the sound design team. I bet you guys are hearing some pretty cool noises and stuff. I bet some of this stuff sounds amazing.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
the tearing! I love to hear it
yeah,
tear, like rip and tear, man. Oh my gosh, id Software better watch out.
yeah.
Uh, Anthony, anything else you want to say about Horizon Forbidden West? And then I'll give you a chance to Corey too at the end here.
I don't think so. I think I've said my piece. Like I said, I'm really enjoying it. I'm glad I'm playing through it. I'm glad I gave it a shot before Elden Ring, because my plan is to finish up Horizon and then spend the next several months on Elden Ring. So
Fair enough. Corey, any closing thoughts?
No, not really. I think Anthony made the right call. He did the right thing. It's we'll get into Elden Ring. I'm excited to go back to Horizon for reasons that I said. I just don't think I'm a big fan of that style of open world game anymore. And we'll get into it for reasons why. But I'm definitely going back. $70. I'm getting my money's worth.
Gotta get your money's worth. And that's $70 before the tax, right?
Exactly. And real quick on that note, one thing I wasn't thrilled about was they posted the PS5 version on the digital storefront for $70. However, the PS4 version is $60, but you get a free PS5 upgrade, and that wasn't made very clear, and I was not happy about that. So if you are watching this and you haven't purchased it, skip the PS5 version, get the PS4 version. You get both. You save $10. It's a win-win. But I believe this is the last time Sony's doing that.
Okay.
Free upgrade. So wasn't thrilled about that, but that's okay. Gorilla can take my extra $10. They deserve it.
Yeah. You're supporting a good developer there who's consistently putting out some great work now, which is wonderful to see.
Right.
Now, gentlemen, we're going to transition into Elden Ring, which weirdly, for the first time in my life, I was there day one, basically, on a From Software game. And people who've watched this show in the past are probably like, this guy hates From Software. I don't hate him. I just have an issue with the game design, the difficulty, the lore versus an actual story. I could go on and on. However, I'll say this much. I put almost 24 hours into Elden Ring, and I've got plenty of things to say. Corey, you've put some time into this as well. Anthony, not yet, waiting for it. It's okay. You're doing the right thing. It's like Breath of the Wild after Horizon. You're like, all right, we'll do this one first, then we'll go to this next one. Corey, how many hours have you put in? Do you know roughly right now?
Probably about the same, 22 to 24 hours, something like that.
Nice. Okay, excellent. Well, the elevator pitch here is for anybody who's not familiar with the From Software games. They're third-person action games that are typically kind of more linear. There are branching paths, and there is an overworld, as it were. But you go against a lot of very difficult bosses, and when you hit checkpoints, all the kind of regular enemies you defeated come back. So it's a lot of kind of learning areas and dealing with these things again and again when you're trying to make your way back to the boss that you probably inevitably lost to the first time or first dozen times. However, From Software is like, hey, I got a fun idea. How about we do open world now, because everybody else has been doing it and we're going to try our hand at it. And I got to say, I'm amazed at the competency of this for their very first open world game. As the guy who's playing open world for as long as I can remember, it's very impressive, I think. And basically, you're trying to go around this big open world, do it at your own pace, your own way. They kind of try to guide you in certain directions because you're trying to take down these massive bosses that are these kind of keepers of the pieces of the Elden Ring, which is what your kind of primary goal is. But it almost feels ancillary to just the experience of going around this world, which doesn't really have a lot of barriers besides just maybe your own skill and deciding if you want to tackle a thing that might be something you should come back to later. Now, while this game is single player in focus, there is co-op, which we will probably get into as well. So for people out there who are kind of like, I don't know if I want to try this out. Like I have a friend, Joe, who's never played any of these games before, but got into it because of co-op, which has been great. But also we got invaded a few times, which means when you're playing co-op that other people can try to sneak in there and try to kill you and your buddy, which was a little frustrating, but it's okay. We got our revenge on a few people, which is great. But Corey, I want to talk with you about this. You're a From Software guy. You got Demon Souls when they remade it by Blue Point and all this stuff. How are you feeling about the change up to the formula?
Yeah, I mean, it's open world Dark Souls, like you said, with heavy inspiration from Breath of the Wild. This is an open world Dark Souls style game with no map barf at all. You will pick up side quests. You will meet NPCs. These are things that will not populate on your map. This is a game that doesn't hit you over the head with anything at all. If you want to figure something out, it's up to you. And that's an approach to game design that I love. Rather than the developer feeding you with systems and text and quests and all this lore and all this stuff, it's all up to you. The direction, the path you want to take. I'm enjoying it greatly. I think Bloodborne's probably my favorite Souls game that they've done. From Software is definitely my favorite modern game developer, going back to Demon Souls, Dark Souls, obviously the sequels. However, the one thing I think is unfair is when people are comparing this game to Breath of the Wild, so the Breath of the Wild had shrines, right? Those were the puzzle dungeons that you would get rewarded for finishing. So this game does have small dungeons spread out throughout, but they're not cookie cutter. They're all handcrafted. And I think that's probably the most impressive thing about this game. And more often than not, there'll be a boss fight at the end of that small dungeon. And then they have larger dungeons called like legacy dungeons. Am I saying that correct, Jimmy?
Yeah. Yep.
Right. Is that the word they're using?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the only legacy dungeon I've done so far is Stormvale, sorry. Mm-hmm. So I'm obsessed with this game. No, it's no surprise. I played an unhealthy amount of this game over the weekend when it came out. And I'm playing a melee class, sword and shield, like I always do. And I absolutely love it. This is one of those games where it's tough to talk about because give me a direction, Jimmy, and I will.
Okay, here's what I gotta know first. And Anthony, please feel free to ask questions if you have any at all. Just be like, hey, I got a question. Corey, you talk about a melee class here. Which class did you start off with, even though knowing that you can kind of dump attributes and change your class over time? Like if you Corey's like, you're putting me on the spot with this.
You're going to put me on the spot, Jimmy.
I will tell you, I started with the samurai, which feels very out of place because like Sekiro they did with Activision. And I feel like a foreigner in a foreign land, or a stranger in a strange land, I should say, where I'm like, it's like this medieval fantasy playing out around me. And I'm wearing a full samurai outfit with like a katana. And I'm like, I've come here to slay the dragon. I'm like, hello. But Corey, did you find your class?
Vagabond. I'm playing a Vagabond.
Ooh, a chunky boy.
So yeah.
Yeah, dude. Nice. Cool. Good for you. So you're doing sword and board.
Sword and board. Yep. It's just, I think, Bloodborne's an interesting game because you're really not blocking in Bloodborne. That is a fast-paced dodge attack game. Yeah. And I love the combat in Bloodborne. So this is very much not that. Yeah. This is not Sekiro. This is not Bloodborne. This is Dark Souls with a jump button. So you can now jump. Thank God. Yeah, it's great.
Oh my God. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, everything about this game, from the way that you summon your horse instantly to the summons, to the generous fast travel graces, the bonfire called graces. They're everywhere. It's still extremely difficult. I am dying a lot, repeatedly, just like those other games. But everything else is very kind, I think.
Yes.
Combat is still satisfying but difficult. Everything else is helping you in a way that so you do not get over the top frustrated. So you're not constantly beating your head against that bottleneck linear progression boss style game that we've seen in the past from Foam Software. So there's an open world to explore. There's additional opportunities now. So if you get stuck, don't stress it. Go find something else to do. Grind it out. Raise your rune levels. Come back. It's a loop. It's a very addicting open world loop.
Yeah, I think you nailed it right there, Corey, with the term kindness. And I think From Software is moving towards a singularity point with the game, maybe after this or the game after that, where there is finally a little more give for players such as myself who found it frustrating that there wasn't a map. They still don't necessarily have like a quest log, which would be kind of nice because you get these things and you forget. Like a person will be like, if you find this person in the open world, definitely let me know. And I'm like,
I know a lot of people using journals and stuff. They'll have like
journals,
or they'll keep it in their phone.
Sure. I guess I can't be troubled. There's the internet. So if it's gonna do that to me, I'm not gonna be sitting here with a pen and paper. No. But that's just me. That's just how I do it. But the level of that kindness, extends where in the past a lot of the criticisms were that the games were too difficult because you'd run into typically like a boss that you just literally couldn't progress past the game until you beat that. There was nothing you could do. You'd have to grind out the souls for it, and you'd have to just keep going until you finally overcame it. And that was a really like stressful thing. But this game says, yeah, you can still do that. If you want to do that, you can do it. You can go. It's almost like Ganondorf again with Breath of the Wild. It's like, you want to go fight Ganondorf in the beginning with 3 hearts and a stick. Great, more power to you. Like Zelda will be so happy you're there. But you don't have to do that here. They give you the ability to just kind of roam around, do those optional things, which I would highly recommend you do if you're kind of stressed out about how tough the bosses can be. Because not only will you be stronger when you go back to them, but you might have unlocked summons that you can bring out, which are optional. You don't have to use that. You might want to focus on a magic build, which is pretty powerful, and just fall back and have your summons attack and then throw your magic. Or one of the first big bosses in the game that they keep showing off in the promotional material, I found it was really simple I soloed it, like, I want to say one of my first times. And what I did is there's like a little NPC you could summon, again, optional. Went in with that NPC. NPC was fighting for a while. NPC died. I summoned a couple of wolves, and that, like, I staggered that, and I was able to defeat him in one go by myself. And I was like, hey, that was pretty fun. And it doesn't need to like beat you over the head with it, because I know there are a lot of people out there who don't want to die 20, 30, 40 times to a boss. And like, that's not a fun like thing for them, especially with their free time being so limited. Like my buddy Joe, he just had a baby, and he's like, my time is limited, so I don't really have like a lot of time to do this sort of thing. So if he had to play this thing alone and get beat up again and again and again, he would be done. And he was almost done the first 2 nights. He was like, I'm dying so much. He's like, this is such a stupid game. I'm so frustrated with it. But now he's in love. He's like, okay, like we're co-oping, we're going around. And the co-op system is still pretty opaque. It's a little strange. The only way it seems like you can kind of summon people in is within the optional areas when the boss is still alive, or the open world when a boss is nearby. So you have to like put your summon sign down, and then someone else has to like use an item, and then they have to like summon you in.
The furlong finger, I think it's called.
Yes, the furled finger. But then
finger,
but then people can invade you, which happened last night to us a few times, and we lost a few times, won a few times, which was great. But it's so much more fun, at least for me, to like go around like Stormvale Castle with a buddy. Like it was so much fun to like go through, and it was frustrating at first, but we overcame it together, and then we got to move on to the next thing. And he felt like there was so much accomplished. He was like, oh my gosh, we did so much. And he like was going to wrap up for the night, but then he was like, well, let's just go explore a little bit more. And then we were just going off and doing things. One of the issues I have with the co-op, and Corey, this is probably something you haven't had to deal with yet, is that Torrent, your horse, or I like to call it a goat horse or gorse, you can't summon that when you're playing co-op. And I was saying maybe it'd be cool if like the person who summoned you in could summon it, and then you got to like, jump on back and be like, all right, I'll go wherever you go. But you
Little
can't do that. So
sidecar.
yeah, little
Yeah.
sidecar, whatever. That'd be great, right? But right now, it's just like, okay, so we're gonna go over to that cliff face over there, and we're running, and it's just like, which thankfully you have infinite stamina when you're out of combat, so there's not like you have to slow down. Yeah, that's great, because like this game is so big. At times you're like, oh my gosh, what if I had to just like my character just went like kind of like Link used to do. But yeah, that would be nice. But I get where it's like if we had two of these torrents or gorses and we ran off in opposite directions, that the game would be like, hey, whoa, there's too much going on here. Like I can't take it. And combat, if you understand how it works with your horse, then you can destroy people by yourself if you're smart about it. Like in the open world, you can take down things that you're like, man, there's no way I could take this thing down on foot. You get on your horse, you go around, you learn your combos, and you can just kind of ride by, and that makes it a bit simpler. Again, completely optional. If you want to fight a dragon on your feet, you can do it. I won't recommend it, but you can totally do it. Like, it's not going to end well, but there is the kind of the I don't know if I would say payoff, but I was going to say the turnaround, where if they do enough damage to Torrent, he'll go down, you'll get knocked off and staggered, and you're on the ground really vulnerable for a long period of time, where a bunch of enemies can come and just wail on you.
And you can resummon Torrent. I think you have to use one of your flask uses.
Mm-hmm.
But a little bit later, once you get the crafting pouch, you can craft little berries that you can feed the horse, and you can replenish the horse's health.
Oh, cool. I haven't tried that yet. That's great.
Yeah, that's the horse is critical to so many boss fights, right? There's that big dragon that's laying in the lake in the beginning near the church.
Yeah.
Good luck fighting that without your horse.
Yeah.
Props to you if you figure it out. But yeah, it's so cool. You get on your horse, you run, you attack, you dip out, you come back, you attack. It's a process, right? But it makes things so much easier. And it's a versatile approach to fighting bosses for sure.
Yeah. And I would also tell people too. Oh, sorry, Anthony, you got a question?
I have a couple questions, but you go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. I'll say this and then I want to hear them. But one thing I've noticed too with a lot of the messages that other players can leave on the ground, they can leave a little message. They come in 3 flavors. Very helpful, complete jokes, and then maybe not safe for work. But one thing I will say, though, is that one of those messages told me that in one of the optional side cave boss areas, it was like, try mounted combat. And I didn't realize I could use it inside for this one portion, but I did. And I was like, whoa, that fight was so much easier, because I was just like riding around this guy and he's like, I can't hit you. And I'm like, but I can hit you. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, way simpler. And I really appreciated that. I was like, that's great. Thanks, Souls community, or like the From Software community, for just being like, here's a little message. And I'm like, thank you. Anthony, give us some questions, man.
Yeah, so I guess the first one is a bigger one. So we'll start there. If someone has not played FromSoft games, do you think this is a good starting point? Because like, so for me, my first FromSoft game was the Demon Souls remake for PS5 when that came out. That was the first one I played. I had played Bloodborne and Dark Souls 2 a little bit before, but never got into them. And then fell in love with Demon Souls, played Dark Souls, played Bloodborne, and now love these games, and I'm very excited for Elden Ring. Do you think this is a good starting point to get into FromSoft, or would you tell someone to jump back to like a Dark Souls or something like that and then work their way up to Elden Ring?
Corey, do you want to take this, or should I?
Well, that's interesting. It's so different than Bloodborne, so I would exclude Bloodborne from that question. That's a great question. Yeah, I would say start with this one, get into it. I think this is by far the most accessible game that they've done, for sure. I think it's a game that they're least likely to bounce off of. I think start with Elden Ring, get used to the combat, and if you love it and you're done with Elden Ring, go play Dark Souls, go play Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, maybe even Bloodborne, just with the expectation that the combat is vastly different. Yeah, I would say start with Elden Ring. How about you, Jimmy?
I would say that this game is going to ruin you. So if you want it, like, you can start with this one, but the gameplay loop that Corey has been talking about, it's not going to be there for those other games. So if that's something you love, or you love an open world game, or you like kind of doing things your own way, remember that if that's what you love. If you love the combat and the really tough bosses and that's what you want, and you're like a sadomasochist, then maybe you should go do the other games, and then you can be like, okay, this is just like a streamlined experience of like what it used to be. So I guess I would say it depends on what you're looking for, But yeah, I don't, like Corey said, it's the most accessible game. I've had people, like I said, who've never touched a From game before, and they're jumping into this and they're like, okay, it's frustrating at first, but when they start to figure stuff out, they're like, oh yeah, okay, I like it. I really like it. So great question. Oh, do you have another one?
Yeah, just one more. I'm curious about the loot system in this game, because in past FromSoft games like Dark Souls and Bloodborne, the loot is very bespoke. So it's like, here, this sword is located in this place. So if you want this sword, like, you won't get it from a random drop. You have to go to this place and get it. And I'm curious if, now that there's an open world aspect to it, is it still like that? Like, this sword is located here. Are there randomized loot drops from enemies? I'm assuming they didn't go to like a full like Diablo colored tiers system, but I don't know. I haven't played it, so maybe.
Yeah, not that I've seen yet. Corey, you might be able to speak more to this, but I think there's still both, where there are randomized loots from like, regular enemies that you fight. But when you kill certain bosses, you do get certain weapons. Because there's one in particular that I know of, and I was like, oh, I've seen like a shadow of another player using this weapon. And I was like, where do you get that thing? And I killed this guy. And I was like, this is where you get it. I tried to wield it, couldn't. I was like, I couldn't even move. I was like, oh my gosh, okay, well, I'm like not using this thing. But Corey, is that kind of the same experience you've had so far?
Yeah, pretty much. The loot in this game is actually one of my only complaints. But yeah, you will find purple items. I've noticed, there's like that streak of light that's coming off of an item. You've seen that in Dark Souls and Bloodborne. It's kind of that little white marker streak. Sometimes you'll find items that's purple. Have you seen that, Jimmy?
Yeah, I think
And
a time or two.
Yeah, it's always indicating you're going to get something special.
Yeah.
Yeah, since we're talking about loot and items, I think that's one of my only real complaints about the game so far is I think when you're playing an open world game, it comes with the expectation you're going to be picking up, especially an open world role-playing game, dark fantasy role-playing game, you're going to be picking up a lot of gear, armor, swords. You don't really expect that a lot in like a Dark Souls or Bloodborne because it is so linear. I'm not finding a lot of gear in this game. Jimmy, you could maybe attest to that. It's a lot of flowers, a lot of crafting items, which is great. You need that stuff. So you are picking up a lot of stuff. One thing that still bothers me is I'll go into a boss fight, or I'll go into a dungeon or a cave, and I'm a vagabond, so I don't need a staff necessarily. Maybe I'll need a staff if I decide to pump all my stats into intelligence or something. But what I need is swords, shields, armor, and I'll beat a boss and they'll give me like a staff or something that I can't use. There's still there's still that, right? And that can be frustrating. I think that stuff's fine in a linear Souls game, but when you're playing an open world role-playing game, you expect to find lots of loot and gear. I'm not finding a lot of loot and gear in this game. Are you, Jimmy?
No, I'm running almost the same outfit and weapon that I am from the beginning of the game. I just upgraded my katana a bunch, but for the most part, it's the same stuff, which is fine. But at the same time, I would like to, get something else where I'd be like, oh, I'm excited about this, but I haven't really yet. I've gotten a few things like a couple van braces or something, or different like, leg armor pieces, but that's about it. So yeah, I'm kind of the same situation, Corey.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead. No, you go ahead, Corey.
I was just going to say I'm using the same starting sword that you get as a vagabond, but I've just leveled it to like +8. So,
gosh, amazing.
I was going to say I do have one more question, just because we've talked about a lot about the comparisons between Elden Ring and Breath of the Wild, and I'm sure people who have played Breath of the Wild are going to want to know this about Elden Ring before they jump in. Is there weapon degradation?
No.
Nope, not at all, baby. No. Yes, no weapon durability. I was like, looking at that. Was that from other From games? Am I crazy? Did they have durability? Okay.
Yeah, they did. Yep.
Because I kept checking, I kept looking. I'm like, I keep smacking rocks and stuff, inadvertently. And I was like looking, I'm like, is my katana just going to break one of these days? And I'm like, it's like, you never repaired your katana. Like, it's like, oh, thank goodness. Thank goodness that's not happening. Oh, I'm so happy. So great question.
There is a blacksmith. Eventually, you minor spoiler, you unlock a hub world that's off the map that you can fast travel to called the Round Table. Have you found the Round Table yet, Jimmy? I'm assuming.
Oh yeah,
Of course.
I'm a card carrying member.
Yeah. So the Round Table is this area that slowly unlocks other areas within the Round Table. It's basically the hub world of Elden Ring that you can fast travel to. And there is a blacksmith there, but you're not repairing items through that blacksmith. There's other services that he'll provide that I won't say it just for lack of just to avoid spoilers, but there are where I'm getting at is there's vendors everywhere selling stuff. So the generosity with the fast travel is really addicting because it's this loop of go out, farm for runes, fast travel to the markets or the vendors, get what you need, repeat the process. So there's always something to do. And the thing that I love about this game is you could easily miss some critical things if you don't know what you're doing. Like I just realized you can upgrade your summons, which I had no idea you could do.
Yeah. I just unlocked that myself, but yeah, there's a whole thing about that. Mm-hmm.
But it's this whole to do just to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
But they tell you nothing. And that's personally what I love about this. I love seeking that stuff out and like, oh, that's how you do it. Rather than someone telling me how to do it. It's weird. I don't know. Do you feel that way, Jimmy, or do you prefer the Horizon style open world game where they're feeding you paragraphs of text on how to do something?
There's a thing a while ago that I actually enjoyed, and it was in Assassin's Creed. Weirdly, they had like you could choose between like a quest marker, or it would give you 3 sentences that would kind of lead you in a direction. And I always thought that was like my favorite middle ground, where it would be like, all right, this place you're looking for, it's to the west of this city. You'll find it underneath this stone archway, and there might be something near the beach or whatever. And I'd be like, okay, perfect, that kind of thing. So the opaqueness is still there from the From Software games of old. And yeah, it's a little frustrating because there's some things that like new players are going to be like, what? I never knew you could do this. Or for instance, having consumable items that will give you runes that you just collect throughout the game, and you could just pop them, and then it's like, oh, I have more runes. But they've also added things that I really like, and we don't have a lot of time left, but I want to get to this really quickly to kind of address some of these things we're talking about. The ability to change how many healing flasks versus like mana flasks you have. That's really cool. You can switch between them. Like if you have 5 flasks, they can either be like 5 or 4 healing, 1 mana, or you can have 3 healing and 2 mana, and then you can strengthen them up over time, which I think is like a really cool thing. And we also didn't really touch on the Ashes of War, which are like these other special abilities you can put onto weapons that give you like magical powers, but your weapons typically come with them too. Like for instance, my katana comes with like a sheath mechanic, and with my quick attack, I can kind of do like the draw like this, but if I do the heavy, it does kind of like a hammer down. But I can replace that with another Ash of War. But I can also take that Ash of War off if I want to go back to that original thing. So
yeah, the Ash of War will provide magic, but it'll also bring your stats of the weapon down.
Yes,
that,
it can change, or depending if you do there's like 2 versions. There's like standard or quality, and it will change your weapon scaling. So like you got to be aware of that if you're like depending on what kind of build you want to do, and it'll show you on your little stat sheet which ones are going to go up or which are going to go down. But yeah, there's so much to talk about with Elden Ring. I feel like we're only scratching the surface. But if we kept going, then we would take over QCTV and talk about Elden Ring constantly. Corey, do you have any closing thoughts though when it comes to Elden Ring, just for people who are still maybe on the fence?
No, it's a massive game. There's a lot to talk about. It's very exciting. It's very difficult, but it's also very accessible at the same time. Yeah, I can't wait to keep playing more. I can't wait to talk more with you guys. Maybe we'll circle back in a month once Anthony's picked it up, and we can have a deeper discussion. I can't wait to get home and play. It's a tremendous game. I absolutely love it.
Yeah. I will say this as people, like I said, have been watching the show, longtime fan. I know you're out there. Hi, Mom. But, people who know me, and I'm not a huge From Software guy. However, I think this is potentially their magnum opus. I think it's one of the most fun games I've played in the last couple of years, and I'm looking forward to getting back to it just because of how accessible it is, how much fun I'm having with my friends, and just the enjoyment of working together on stuff. Even if it's not co-op, if we're just kind of on comms together, I'm like, okay, go over here and check this out, and he's like, okay, go over here, and there's this thing I found. It feels like old school, and I gave a tip in real life to another person playing, and he's like, dude, this is what I love about this game. It's like old fashioned. It's like Pokemon on the playground. You know, you'd be like, no, what you're gonna want to do is go here, do this, and then it'll help like happen. He's like, oh my gosh, dude, amazing. So he was like, good to know. So yeah, Elden Ring. I'm excited, Anthony, for you to check it out, because I think it'll be a nice change of pace after Horizon. Even though Horizon, it's just a different dish, you know, just a different dish.
Definitely.
So many great dishes. Oh my gosh. Either way, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today. I could talk with you for hours and hours, but unfortunately, they're going to pull the plug on us at some point here. But Anthony, thank you again for joining us. It's always a great time chatting with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. And Corey, you wonderful person. Thank you for being my co-host as per usual. We've got our pictures of our dogs in the background here. I only did it because you did it. And I was like, well, I got it. If I don't show Lily, she's watching and she'll be frustrated.
I got to get one for next time.
Get one for next. Well, you got Godzilla. You've got Godzilla. And I was like, I was like, that's your dog, right? That's your buddy. Yeah. And a huge thanks to QCTV for letting us do this show continuously. If you want to see more episodes, we have them all linked on the .org if you guys want to go check that out, like every single Game Sharks episode. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with us, and until next time, take care, dear viewers. Bye-bye.